You know, when you've been a diplomat for 347 years, you start to think you've seen everything. Wars, peace treaties, trade disputes, the occasional interspecies romantic scandal that makes the galactic news feeds go absolutely insane. But Ambassador Vexthara had never, in all her centuries of service, been summoned to an emergency council meeting at 3 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. The Galactic Council chamber looked like a cosmic garage sale of anxiety. 17 different species, all talking at once, all gesticulating with whatever appendages they had available. The Zephyrian crystalline war had been dragging on for 47 years now, and everyone was getting tired of it. Well, everyone except the Zephyrians and the crystallines, who seemed perfectly content to keep blowing each other up indefinitely. Ambassador Vexthara, wheezed Council Chairman Blocksneth, his breathing apparatus making him sound like a deflating balloon. We have a situation. Vexthara's 4 eyes rolled in perfect synchronization. Let me guess. The peace talks collapsed again. The Zephyrins want to keep their stolen mining rights. The Crystallins want reparations for the last 47 years of warfare, and somehow it's my job to fix it. Actually, Blocksneth continued, it's worse than that. They've both agreed to one final negotiation. 72 hours. If we can't broker peace by then, they're escalating to planet-cracking weapons. The chamber fell silent. Planet-cracking weapons hadn't been used in over 1,000 years. The last time someone deployed one, it created a tourist attraction that's still dangerous to visit. So naturally, Vexthara said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, you want me to perform a miracle and convince 2 species who've been trying to genocide each other for nearly half a century to suddenly start sharing recipes and comparing vacation photos? That's the spirit, Blocksneth said, completely missing the sarcasm. But we're not sending you in alone. We've hired you the best bodyguard in the galaxy. Vexthara perked up slightly. A Quranian battle monk? One of those cybernetic Nexus warriors? Better, Blocksneth said, consulting his datapad. We got you a human. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop in the vacuum of space. Then, as if someone had opened an airlock, the chamber erupted in panic. A human? Shrieked Counselor Piptara, her tentacles writhing in horror. Have you lost your collective minds? They're from a death world, whispered someone in the back. They eat poison for recreation, added another voice. I heard they throw themselves off cliffs for fun, came a third. Vexthara stared at the council chairman, her diplomatic training warring with her survival instincts. You want me to negotiate the most important peace treaty in galactic history while being protected by a creature from a planet where literally everything is trying to kill everything else? His name is Jake Murphy, Blocksneth said proudly. He comes highly recommended, very reasonable rates too. Now, if you've never met a human before, let me paint you a picture. They're about average height for a galactic citizen, which is to say they're tall enough to be intimidating, but not so tall that they have to duck through doorways. They have these weird, flexible faces that change shape to express emotions, which is frankly terrifying if you're not used to it. And they have these things called teeth that they use for grinding up food, but they look like they could bite through titanium. Jake Murphy was sitting in the council's waiting area, casually eating what appeared to be a sandwich. But this wasn't any ordinary sandwich. This was a human sandwich, which meant it contained enough capsaicin to kill a small Regalian, enough processed meat to poison a vegan diplomat, and enough complex carbohydrates to put a Keto-Nean into a coma. Ambassador Vexthara? Jake stood up, extending his hand in what humans call a handshake. Vexthara stared at the appendage like it was a live grenade. I'm Jake Murphy. I'll be your bodyguard for this mission. Vexthara's diplomatic training kicked in, barely. Yes, well, I'm sure you're very qualified for this position. Thanks, Jake said, taking another bite of his sandwich. I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about this gig. I've never been to a peace negotiation before. Sounds way more interesting than my last job. What was your last job? Vexthara asked, though she immediately regretted it. Oh, I was a kindergarten teacher. The silence stretched on. Finally, Vexthara managed. You taught young humans? Yeah, 5-year-olds. Great kids, but man, they have so much energy. Always running around, climbing things, putting random objects in their mouths. You really have to keep your eyes on them. Vexthara's mind reeled. This creature had been responsible for controlling multiple young humans simultaneously. The most dangerous species in the galaxy, and he'd been managing their offspring. In groups. The job posting mentioned that you needed someone who could handle high-stress situations, and wasn't afraid of a little conflict, Jake continued cheerfully. After dealing with 25 kids arguing over who gets to use the red crayon, I figure I can handle a couple of alien diplomats. You do realize, Vexthara said carefully, that you're considered the most dangerous creature in known space. Jake paused mid-chew. Me? Really? That's weird. I mean, I'm pretty harmless. I don't even eat meat on Mondays. You're from Earth? Vexthara pressed. A class called XII Death World. Your planet is so dangerous that the Galactic Tourism Board requires a 17-page waiver just to visit your moon. Oh, that, Jake waved dismissively. Yeah, Earth's a little rough around the edges, but you get used to it. I mean, sure, we've got some poisonous plants and a few bitey animals, but it's not that bad. Just last week I went hiking in the mountains and only ran into 2 bears. 2 bears? Yeah, Mama Bear and her cub. Super cute. I kept my distance, of course. You don't want to get between a mother and her baby. Vexthara realized she was hyperventilating. This human had casually encountered 2 of Earth's apex predators and described them as cute. Anyway, Jake said, finishing his sandwich. When do we ship out? I packed light, just the essentials. He gestured to what appeared to be a small backpack. That's all you brought? Vexthara asked. Sure, I've got a change of clothes, some snacks, a first aid kit, and a few books. Oh, and my lucky multi-tool. Never know when you might need to fix something. He pulled out what looked like a small device that unfolded into at least 12 different implements, each of which looked like it could be used as a weapon in the right hands, which, coincidentally, were human hands. Right, Vexthara said weakly. Well, I suppose we should get going. The diplomatic transport is waiting. Awesome, Jake said, shouldering his pack. I've never been on a spaceship before. This is going to be fun. As they walked toward the docking bay, Vexthara couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to enter the most dangerous diplomatic mission in galactic history. And somehow, the scariest thing about it was that her bodyguard thought it was going to be fun. The diplomatic transport ship Peaceful Endeavor was a marvel of galactic engineering, designed specifically for carrying important dignitaries safely through hostile space. It had triple redundant life support systems, military-grade shields, and enough firepower to discourage even the most determined pirates. What it did not have was a human-compatible food synthesizer. So, Jake said, settling into his seat and looking around the luxurious cabin. This is pretty nice. Very spacious. On Earth, the longest flight I ever took was about 12 hours, and they crammed us in there like sardines. Captain Grixnell, a veteran Altarian who'd been flying diplomatic missions for 2 decades, nearly choked on his nutrient paste. Sardines? Oh, they're these little fish. We pack them really tightly in cans. Great on crackers. Jake pulled out what appeared to be a small metal cylinder from his backpack. Want to try some? I brought extras. The entire bridge crew took a collective step backward. Vexthara quickly intervened. That's very kind of you, Jake, but I don't think our digestive systems are compatible with Earth food. No problem, Jake said, opening the can with a device that looked suspiciously like a miniature sword. More for me. The smell that emerged from the can was indescribable, but it made the ship's air filtration system go into emergency mode. Jake, meanwhile, was happily eating what appeared to be decomposed fish with every sign of enjoyment. So, Jake said between bites, tell me about these folks we're meeting, the Zephyrians and the Crystallans. What's their deal? Vexthara launched into a detailed explanation of the conflict, the territorial disputes, the resource wars, the cultural misunderstandings that had escalated into genocide. Jake listened attentively, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. Wow, he said when she finished. 47 years of fighting over some mining rights and hurt feelings. That's rough. You know, we had something similar happen on Earth once. Well, okay, several times. But there was this one war that lasted 100 years. 100 years? Squeaked Navigator Picklix. Yeah, the 100 Years' War. France and England, they fought over who got to be King of France. Took 'em a century to figure out that maybe they should just let the French decide for themselves. And how did it end? Vexthara asked, despite herself. Oh, they got tired of fighting and signed a treaty. Then they started fighting other people instead. Humans are weird like that. We can't seem to sit still for very long. The crew exchanged terrified glances. This creature was casually describing century-long wars as if they were minor inconveniences. But hey, Jake continued, at least we usually make up eventually. Like my great-grandfather fought in World War II, and now I've got German and Japanese friends. We're pretty good at forgetting old grudges when there's food involved. World War II? Captain Grixnell asked weakly. Oh, that was a big one. Global conflict. Lasted about 6 years. Pretty much everyone got involved. Nasty business, but we sorted it out. Jake pulled out a small device that looked like a communicator. Want to see some pictures from my vacation to Japan last year? Beautiful country. Amazing food. It's hard to believe we were trying to kill each other 80 years ago. The device displayed images of Jake standing next to various landmarks, smiling that terrifying human smile, completely oblivious to the fact that he was casually documenting his visit to a former enemy nation as if it were the most natural thing in the galaxy. "You know what's funny?" Jake said, scrolling through more pictures. "I was talking to this old guy in Tokyo, and he told me about his grandfather who fought in the war. We compared stories about our grandfather's experiences, and then we went and got sushi together. Good sushi, too, really fresh fish." By this point, the crew was staring at Jake with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters. Here was a creature describing how his species had engaged in global warfare and then bonded with former enemies over consuming raw fish. "Jake," Vexthara said carefully, "why are you telling us this?" "Oh, I just thought it might be helpful for the negotiations. I mean, if humans can figure out how to stop fighting and start being friends, maybe these Zephyrin and Crystalline folks can too. Sometimes people just need to sit down and have a good meal together." Jake stood up and stretched, his joints making small popping sounds that caused the entire crew to flinch. "Speaking of which, is there a gym on this ship? I've been sitting for like 3 hours, and I'm starting to get antsy." "There's a fitness facility on Deck 7, Captain Grixnell said automatically, "but it's not really designed for—" "Awesome," Jake said, already heading for the door. "I'll just go burn off some energy, nothing too intense, just some basic cardio." After he left, the bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Finally, Communications Officer Q-Extra spoke up. "Did he just say he was going to do cardio? For fun?" "And he wants to feed the enemy diplomats," added Navigator Piplix. "His species fights 100-year wars and then makes friends over raw fish," whispered Captain Grixnell. Vexthara slumped in her chair. "I'm starting to think this mission might actually work, and that terrifies me more than anything." 20 minutes later, Jake returned, looking refreshed and energetic. Behind him, the ship's maintenance crew was frantically trying to figure out why the gym's reinforced exercise equipment was now bent into interesting geometric shapes. "Great workout," Jake said cheerfully. "This is going to be fun." The neutral station Harmony was a monument to galactic diplomacy, a massive space station positioned exactly equidistant from both the Zephyrin Empire and the Crystalline Confederation. It had been constructed specifically for peace negotiations, with every detail designed to avoid favoring either side. The meeting room was a perfect circle, with identical chairs, identical lighting, and identical temperature controls for each delegation. What it didn't have was a protocol for dealing with humans. "Remember," Vexthara whispered to Jake as they approached the conference room, "just stand quietly in the corner and try not to, exist too obviously." "Got it," Jake whispered back. "I'll be invisible like a ninja." The fact that Jake knew what a ninja was somehow made Vexthara even more nervous. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a scene that would have been impressive if it wasn't so terrifying. On one side of the circular table sat General Crixton of the Zephyrian Empire, a 7-foot-tall reptilian creature whose scales had been forged in the fires of 1,000 battles. His battle armor was scarred and dented, each mark a testament to his survival of conflicts that had claimed entire planets. His eyes glowed with the cold fire of someone who had spent 47 years perfecting the art of war. Across from him sat Hive Queen Melodia of the Crystalline Confederation, a being of living crystal whose body refracted light into deadly rainbow patterns. Her voice, when she spoke, harmonized with itself in frequencies that could shatter glass at close range. She was accompanied by her drone escorts, each one a smaller version of herself, their crystalline bodies humming with barely contained energy. "Ambassador Vexthara," General Crixton's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I trust you understand that this is merely a formality. The Empire has no intention of negotiating with crystal parasites." "Parasites?" Hive Queen Melodia's harmonic voice rose to a pitch that made the room's windows vibrate. "Your species wouldn't know symbiosis if it bit you on your scaly posterior. Which, incidentally, is exactly what we intend to do." "Excellent," Vexthara muttered under her breath. "We're off to a great start." She cleared her throat diplomatically. "Perhaps we could begin with a review of the territorial boundaries established in the Proxima Accords?" "The Proxima Accords are void," General Crixton declared, slamming his clawed fist on the table. "They were signed under duress while my predecessor was suffering from Regelian flu." "Your predecessor agreed to those boundaries because he was caught trying to steal our nesting crystals," Hive Queen Melodier replied, her drone escorts humming in angry harmonics. "The only thing he was suffering from was chronic stupidity." "That's it!" General Crixton stood up, his massive form casting a shadow across the table. "I'm done with this charade. The Empire will resume our planetary bombardment in 6 hours. This time, we're not stopping until every last crystal is space dust. Bring it on, Scale Brain. Hive Queen Melodia's form began to pulse with dangerous light. We've developed new resonance weapons that will turn your ships into abstract art. Very abstract. Very exploded. Vexthara watched 47 years of diplomatic progress evaporate in the space of 5 minutes. This was going exactly as badly as she'd expected, which meant it was going worse than she'd hoped, but not quite as catastrophically as she'd feared. Yet, perhaps, she tried desperately, we could discuss the mining rights separately from the territorial disputes? The mining rights are non-negotiable, General Crixton growled. Those asteroids have been in Imperial space for 3 generations. We're in Imperial space because you moved the boundary markers, Hive Queen Melodia shot back. We have holographic evidence of your ships literally dragging the navigation beacons into new positions. It was a military exercise. A military exercise that coincidentally relocated 47 billion credits worth of rare mineral deposits into your territory. Ladies and gentlemen, Vexthara said, raising her voice, perhaps we could take a short recess and— No recess, General Crixton interrupted. We're done here. The Empire has wasted enough time on this farce. For once, I agree with the lizard, Hive Queen Melodia said, her crystalline form beginning to shift into what looked suspiciously like a combat configuration. The Confederation has better things to do than listen to his delusions of competence. Jake, who had been standing quietly in the corner as instructed, chose this moment to raise his hand like a student in class. Excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but is there a coffee machine somewhere? This is fascinating stuff, but I'm getting a little drowsy and I don't want to miss anything important. The room fell silent, not the comfortable silence of people thinking, but the absolute silence of people whose brains have just encountered something so unexpected that they need to reboot. General Crixton's glowing eyes fixed on Jake. What, he said slowly, is that? It. Hive Queen Melodia's voice dropped to a whisper, is a human. The silence stretched on. Jake looked around the room, clearly confused by the sudden attention. Hi there. I'm Jake. I'm just here to make sure nobody tries to hurt Ambassador Vexthara during the negotiations. Not that I expect any trouble or anything. You all seem like reasonable people. Well, people adjacent. You know what I mean. General Crixton's clawed hand moved instinctively to his weapon. There's a human in the room. I can see that, Hive Queen Melodia replied, her drone escorts shifting into defensive positions. The question is, what do we do about it? Do about what? Jake asked, still smiling that terrifying human smile. I'm just here to observe. Think of me as a friendly fly on the wall. A friendly fly who's really hoping someone can point me toward a caffeine source. Ambassador Vexthara, General Crixton said, never taking his eyes off Jake. Why did you bring a Death World predator to a peace negotiation? He's my bodyguard, Vexthara said weakly. Your bodyguard, Hive Queen Melodia repeated. You brought a human bodyguard to protect you from us. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds kind of insulting, Jake said. I'm sure you're all perfectly safe. I mean, this is a peace negotiation, right? What's the worst that could happen? The silence returned, even more profound than before. Both delegations stared at Jake, with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters or particularly spectacular explosions. Right, General Crixton said finally. Change of plans. This negotiation is postponed indefinitely. Agreed, Hive Queen Melodia said immediately. The Confederation needs to consult with our military advisors. About what? Jake asked. About you, both leaders said simultaneously. Me? But I'm just here for the coffee and the fascinating political discourse. I'm not even supposed to participate. I'm more of a, observer. A very quiet, very harmless observer. General Crixton and Hive Queen Melodia exchanged a look that somehow transcended their 47 years of mutual hatred. It was a look that said, we may want to kill each other, but we both recognize an existential threat when we see one. The recess, General Crixton said, backing toward the door, will be extended. Indefinitely, Hive Queen Melodia agreed, her crystalline form already shifting toward the exit. As both delegations fled the room with unprecedented speed, Jake turned to Vexthara with a confused expression. Did I say something wrong? I was just trying to be friendly. Vexthara stared at the empty conference room, then at Jake, then back at the empty room. Jake, she said slowly, I think you might be the most effective diplomat in galactic history. Really? Cool. So, about that coffee. 20 minutes later, Jake returned to the conference room, carrying a steaming mug of what appeared to be liquid caffeine concentrate. He'd found the station's emergency medical stimulant dispenser and had somehow convinced it to produce something that resembled coffee, but could probably wake the dead. The smell alone was making the room's air recycling system work overtime. Okay, he said brightly, settling into a chair at the circular table. I'm all caffeinated up and ready to learn about galactic politics. This is going to be educational. Beck Thera, who had spent the last 20 minutes receiving increasingly frantic communications from both delegations, looked like she'd aged several years in the past hour. Jake, I need to tell you something. Both sides are calling in their fleets. Air fleets? Military fleets. Warships. The kind with really big guns that can blow up planets. Jake paused, with his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Wait, are they planning to fight here? During the peace talks? They're planning to fight here because of the peace talks. Or more specifically, because of you. Me? Jake's face showed genuine confusion. But I haven't done anything except ask for coffee. I've been super careful not to interfere with the negotiations. Jake, Vexthara said gently, you are the interference. Your mere presence has convinced both sides that this is some kind of trap. That's ridiculous, I'm just one guy. What could I possibly do to an entire space fleet? Before Vexthara could answer, the conference room doors burst open. General Crixton strode in, his battle armor now supplemented with what appeared to be every weapon in the Zephyrian arsenal. Behind him marched a squad of elite Imperial guards, their plasma rifles charged and ready. Human, General Crixton announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered star systems. You will explain your presence here immediately. Oh, hi again, Jake said, waving cheerfully. I'm just here to make sure nobody hurts Ambassador Vexthara during the negotiations. Pretty standard bodyguard stuff. There are no negotiations, General Crixton declared. The Crystalline Confederation has mobilized their entire battle fleet. They're clearly preparing for a massive offensive, using these peace talks as cover. That's terrible, Jake said, looking genuinely concerned. Have you tried talking to them about it? The general's glowing eyes widened. Talking to them? Yeah, you know, communication. It's this amazing thing humans figured out where you use words to explain what you're thinking, instead of just assuming the other person knows. Works great for avoiding misunderstandings. Before General Crixton could respond, the room's other entrance exploded inward in a shower of crystalline shards. Hive Queen Melogia glided in, her form now bristling with what appeared to be organic weapons that grew directly from her crystalline body. Her drone escorts had multiplied, and they filled the room with their harmonic buzzing. Zephyrian warmonger, she announced, her voice creating visible distortions in the air. Your fleet movements have been detected. The Confederation will not be caught unprepared by your treachery. Our fleet movements? General Crixton roared. You're the ones who mobilized first. We mobilized in response to your mobilization. We mobilized in response to your mobilization. That doesn't even make sense. You don't make sense. Jake watched this exchange with the patient expression of someone who had indeed spent years managing kindergartners. He took a slow sip of his coffee and cleared his throat. Excuse me. Both leaders turned to stare at him, their weapons still trained on each other. I don't want to interrupt, Jake continued. But it sounds like you both did the same thing for the same reason. You both saw the other side's fleet movements and decided to protect yourselves. That's not treachery, that's just being careful. The human speaks truth, Hive Queen Melodia said slowly, her harmonic voice dropping to a confused whisper. It does seem logical, General Crixton admitted reluctantly. Right, Jake said, standing up. So the real question is, why are you both so scared of each other? I mean, you've been fighting for 47 years. You must know each other pretty well by now. We know them well enough, General Crixton growled. They're expansionist crystal parasites who want to consume our resources. And they're territorial scale brains who want to steal our nesting grounds, Hive Queen Melodia added. Okay, but here's the thing, Jake said, walking around the table with his coffee cup. You both just accused each other of wanting the same things. Resources and territory. That's not evil, that's just survival. Every species needs those things. He stopped between the two leaders, apparently oblivious to the fact that he was now standing directly between two of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. So instead of fighting over who gets what, why don't you just share? I mean, you've got an entire galaxy out there. There's plenty of room for both of you. The silence that followed was so profound that you could have heard a photon drop. Share? General Crixton said the word like it was a foreign concept. Share, Hive Queen Melodia repeated, her crystalline form flickering with what might have been confusion. Sure, Jake said, taking another sip of coffee. Like the Zephyrins are really good at military stuff and mining, right? And the crystallines are excellent at energy manipulation and, I'm guessing, growing things? We excel at bio-crystal cultivation, Hive Queen Melodia admitted. And Imperial mining operations are the most efficient in the galaxy, General Crixton added with obvious pride. Perfect, Jake said. So why not work together? The Zephyrians could handle the mining and security, the Crystallans could handle the energy systems and agriculture. You'd both get what you need, and nobody has to keep blowing each other up. But, General Crixon said weakly, we're enemies. Why? Jake asked simply. Because they attacked our mining stations 47 years ago. Because you built your mining stations on our sacred nesting grounds without asking, Hive Queen Melodia pointed out. Because you never told us they were sacred. Because you never asked. Because we didn't know we were supposed to ask. Because we'd never met before? Jake watched this exchange with growing excitement. So, let me get this straight. You've been fighting for 47 years because of a misunderstanding that happened when you first met? Both leaders stared at him. That's actually correct, General Crixton said slowly. We have been fighting over a communication error, Hive Queen Melodia admitted. For 47 years, Jake repeated. You've been killing each other for 47 years because nobody thought to say, hey, excuse me, this might be a problem. Can we talk about it? The silence stretched on. Finally, General Crixton spoke. When you put it like that, it sounds rather stupid. Monumentally stupid, Hive Queen Melodia agreed. So, Jake said, finishing his coffee. Want to try that conversation now? You know, the one you should have had 47 years ago. General Crixton and Hive Queen Melodia looked at each other across the conference table. Really looked at each other, perhaps for the first time in decades. General Crixton, Hive Queen Melodia said formally, the Crystalline Confederation apologizes for attacking your mining stations without first attempting diplomatic contact. Hive Queen Melodia, General Crixton replied, his voice equally formal. The Zephyrin Empire apologizes for establishing mining operations on your sacred nesting grounds without first requesting permission. Would it be acceptable to relocate the mining operations to the adjacent asteroid fields? Would it be acceptable to establish joint mining operations with shared profits? That would be highly acceptable. Jake grinned. See, was that so hard? Both leaders turned to stare at him with expressions that mixed gratitude, horror, and complete bewilderment. Human Jake Murphy, General Crixton said slowly. You have ended a 47-year war in 3 minutes, using nothing but common sense and coffee. And slightly terrifying implications about your species' conflict resolution capabilities, Hive Queen Melodia added. Really? Jake said, looking pleased. Cool. So, are you guys going to be friends now? We are going to be very, very careful allies, General Crixton said. We are going to be extremely cautious partners, Hive Queen Melodia agreed. And we are both going to pretend that we always intended to resolve this conflict peacefully, General Crixton continued. And we are never, ever going to mention that it took a human to point out that we were being idiots, Hive Queen Melodia concluded. Sounds good to me, Jake said. Now, should we probably call off those fleets before they start shooting at each other out of habit? Both leaders suddenly looked very, very tired. Yes, they said in unison, we should definitely do that. As they began frantically contacting their respective fleets, Jake turned to Vexthara with a satisfied smile. See, I told you this was going to be fun. Vexthara stared at him for a long moment, then began laughing. Not the polite, diplomatic laughter she'd perfected over centuries, but the deep, slightly hysterical laughter of someone who had just watched the impossible happen. Jake, she said finally, you are the most terrifying diplomat in galactic history. Thanks, Jake said, apparently taking it as a compliment. I think I'm starting to like this job. Within 6 hours of the peace treaty signing, the news had spread across every inhabited system in the galaxy. The Galactic News Network's headline read, Human Diplomat Ends 47-Year War with Coffee and Common Sense. The subheading was even more dramatic. Death World Species Achieves What Centuries of Diplomacy Could Not. Jake Murphy, the man at the center of this galactic sensation, was sitting in the station's cafeteria, working his way through what appeared to be a sandwich that violated several laws of physics and at least one treaty regarding biological weapons. I still don't understand what all the fuss is about, he said to Vexthara, who was fielding her 47th congratulatory call of the day. I mean, they were obviously just having a communication problem. Anyone could have pointed that out. Jake, Vexthara said, putting down her communicator with the weary resignation of someone who had spent 3 centuries in diplomacy and was only now discovering what actual diplomatic success looked like. You do realize that you've just been awarded the Galactic Peace Medal, the Order of Universal Harmony, and the Crystalline Confederation's highest civilian honor, right? That's nice of them, Jake said, taking another bite of his sandwich. Do any of those come with a cash prize? I'm thinking about getting a new coffee maker when I get back to Earth. Before Vexthara could answer, a delegation of news reporters from 17 different species descended upon their table like a swarm of information-hungry locusts. Camera drones buzzed overhead, their mechanical eyes focusing on Jake with the intensity of predators spotting prey. "Mr. Murphy!" shouted a reporter whose species Vexthara couldn't immediately identify, though it appeared to be mostly tentacles and enthusiasm. "How does it feel to be the most successful diplomat in galactic history?" Jake looked up from his sandwich with the expression of someone who had just been asked to explain quantum mechanics to a goldfish. "I'm not a diplomat, I'm a bodyguard. A pretty terrible one, actually. I mean, nobody even tried to hurt Ambassador Vexthara, so technically, I didn't do anything." "But you ended a 47-year war," squeaked another reporter, this one resembling a very excited purple mushroom. "Did I?" Jake asked, looking genuinely confused. "I thought General Crixton and Hive Queen Melodia ended the war. I just asked them to talk to each other. That's not ending a war, that's just basic communication skills." The reporters exchanged glances that somehow conveyed both excitement and terror. Here was a human who had accomplished the impossible and was treating it like he'd helped someone find their lost keys. "Mr. Murphy," said a third reporter, this one a crystalline being who bore a striking resemblance to the Confederation's leadership, "what do you think this means for human-galactic relations?" Jake paused mid-chew, considering the question with the serious attention he gave to all inquiries. "Well, I guess it means people should probably talk to each other more instead of assuming the worst. I mean, that's pretty basic stuff, right? My kindergarten kids figured that out by the end of the school year." "Your kindergarten kids?" The tentacle reporter's voice rose to a pitch that made the station's structural supports vibrate. "Yeah, 5-year-olds. They're great at conflict resolution once you teach them to use their words instead of throwing blocks at each other. Come to think of it, that's kind of what happened here, except with spaceships instead of blocks." The silence that followed was the kind of profound quiet that occurs when an entire room full of beings simultaneously realizes they've been covering the wrong story. They thought they were reporting on a diplomatic breakthrough. Instead, they were witnessing a human casually compare galactic warfare to a preschool disagreement. "So," Jake continued, apparently oblivious to the existential crisis he just triggered, "are there any other wars I should know about? I mean, if people just need someone to point out that they should talk to each other. I've got some vacation time coming up." Vexthara's 4 eyes widened in horror. "Jake, no." "Jake." "Yes," shouted the mushroom reporter. "Are you offering to mediate other conflicts?" "Sure, why not? It seems pretty straightforward. Plus, I'd get to travel, which is always nice. I've never been to the Andromeda Galaxy. I hear they have amazing food." Within minutes, Vexthara's communicator was buzzing with calls from every conflict zone in known space. The Regellian trade disputes wanted to hire Jake immediately. The Centauri border conflicts were offering him a permanent position. The Vegano-Micron philosophical wars were prepared to pay him in whatever currency humans preferred, up to and including their own body weight in rare minerals. "Jake," Vexthara said desperately, "you can't just solve every galactic conflict during your vacation." "Why not?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. "I mean, if they're all just communication problems, it shouldn't take too long. I was thinking of doing some hiking anyway. I could combine it with a little conflict resolution, make it a working vacation." The reporters were now frantically scribbling notes, their various writing appendages moving so fast they were creating small sonic booms. The story was getting better by the minute. "Mr. Murphy," the crystalline reporter said, "what would you say to critics who argue that humans are too dangerous to be involved in galactic diplomacy?" Jake paused, his sandwich halfway to his mouth. "Too dangerous? That's weird. I mean, I'm probably the least dangerous person I know. I don't even kill spiders, I just put them outside." He thought for a moment. "Although, I guess if someone tried to hurt Ambassador Vexthara, I'd probably have to do something about it, but that's just basic bodyguard stuff." The way he said "do something about it," with the same tone he'd used to describe relocating spiders, caused every reporter in the room to take a collective step backward. "Right," Vexthara said, standing up quickly. I think that's enough questions for today. Mr. Murphy needs to rest before his return journey to Earth. Actually, Jake said, I was thinking about staying a few more days. I've never been to a space station before, and I'd love to check out the zero-gravity gardens. Plus, I heard there's a really good restaurant on level 7 that serves something called molecular gastronomy. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds interesting. The thought of Jake Murphy wandering around a space station, casually ending conflicts and trying exotic foods, was apparently too much for the reporters to handle. They began talking over each other, their various languages creating a cacophony that sounded like a diplomatic incident waiting to happen. And this, Vexera muttered to herself, is how Jake Murphy accidentally started the second Great Galactic News War. But Jake, oblivious to the chaos he'd created, was already planning his next meal. I wonder if they have any of those little fish here, you know, the ones that aren't quite dead yet? I saw a documentary about them once. They looked delicious. The reporters, upon hearing a human casually discuss consuming living organisms, fled the cafeteria with impressive speed. Within minutes, Jake and Vexthara were alone again, surrounded by the peaceful quiet of a job well done, and a dozen new diplomatic crises brewing. Jake, Vexthara said finally, promise me something. Sure, what? When you go on your vacation, try not to end any more wars by accident. Jake grinned that terrifying human grin. I can't promise that. I mean, what if I run into more people who just need to talk to each other? It would be rude not to help. Vexthara looked at him for a long moment, then began laughing again. The deep, slightly hysterical laughter of someone who had just realized that the galaxy would never be the same. Jake, she said, you are going to be the most accidentally successful diplomat in galactic history. Cool, Jake said, finishing his sandwich. I think I'm going to like this job. And somewhere in the vastness of space, 17 different war zones began preparing peace offerings, just in case a certain human decided to take his vacation in their direction.